Meeting to order, please. This is the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting for Thursday, August 18th, 2016. The time is 7 p.m. Please call the roll.
Trustee Valerie.
Here.
Trustee Collins. Here. Trustee Satterthwaite.
Here.
President Sells.
Here.
Village Manager Francis.
Here.
Village Attorney Mars.
Here.
Also present Village Clerk Haley. Not with us this evening, Trustee Hamilton, Trustee Pollack, and Trustee Lumsden.
To my knowledge, Trustee Lumsden is right here.
All right.
Can we retake the roll? You're over here too now. You're really, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. If you'll please rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all of the folks who are here with us tonight and those watching at home. If you are here this evening and you would like to address the board at any point, I ask that you please be recognized by the president and that you make your comments from the podium so the folks at home can hear and see what you have to say. I also saw a little sign that Riverside TV put on the podium saying that the microphone is where it needs to be. So don't mess with the microphone or you'll incur the wrath of Riverside TV. So first up this evening are presentations and public comment. We have an update tonight from ComEd regarding a number of recent outages and some infrastructure improvements that they are doing here within the village. So with that, gentlemen.
Good evening, President, Trustees, Village Manager Jessica Francis, as well as Chief Buckley and the entire public safety team here in Riverside. I am Corey Foster. I have the pleasure of now serving as your newly assigned External Affairs Manager for ComEd, supporting the Village of Riverside. I first would like to take a moment to introduce a couple of members of our ComEd management team. I have Michael Henry, our Senior External Affairs Manager, and then also I have Frank Gonzalez, our Operations Manager for the Maywood region, which covers pretty much the entire West Central Municipal Conference. And then we also have Sean Hughes, the account manager with Intren Incorporated, and we're all here to provide a brief update on system enhancements as well as address any outstanding concerns you may have as a board, but also as residents of Riverside. We're here to support you and address any of your concerns that you might have. ComEd is definitely focused on providing reliable and resilient energy. In 2012, ComEd began modernizing the electricity system to provide customers with better service and greater control over their electricity use. We continue to make significant capital investments in our system and storm process improvements. Since 2012, smart grid investments in the Village of Riverside include installation of 9 distribution automation devices. These devices kind of assist us with avoiding customer interruptions. We also, in accordance with the Energy Infrastructure Modernization Act, we affectionately term as EMA. We're really big on acronyms, I'm learning with ComEd. During 2015, we inspected and treated as needed 2,350 poles, and this calendar year we identified 3 poles to be replaced. 1 is already complete, and then 1 has been reinforced. We've also completed 15 manhole assessments throughout the village. We've also really paid close attention to vegetation management, which Riverside is known for, your beautiful tree lines, and we've really taken a hard look at that. And we've actually addressed over 84 miles completed along Riverside's 18 feeders throughout the village. Reliability and performance for Riverside. Year to date, Riverside has seen a number of outages, and that's what brings us here today. But also we wanted to make sure that we address some of your concerns surrounding the completion of our Hendricks line installation, and Sean will be able to address that in a little bit. But out of the outages that we've seen, 64% of them have been associated really with the Burlington feeder, which is D516 to use our acronym and our terminology, but that's basically along Burlington Street, those lines there around Burlington Street where we've done a lot of system enhancements there, and that we'll be able to speak to a little bit later. Also, it should be noted that out of the outages that you've experienced most recently, I would say 50% of them have been weather-related or vegetation-related, meaning a fallen limb or windstorms or lightning. That's based on our assessment. I will now yield the floor to Frank Gonzalez, our operations manager for the Maywood region, for a few brief remarks. And then Sean Hughes, our account manager at Intren Incorporated, will expound on the most recent hydrants installation and storm hardening along the Burlington Street, as well as some of the surrounding surrounding streets around Burlington, which is, and upon conclusion of Sean's presentation and brief remarks, we definitely welcome any questions that you might have, and we'll be available. Michael Henry will be available, Frank will be available, Sean and I will be available to address any of your concerns that you might have after a few brief remarks. We wanted to try to just provide a really brief, high-level view of snapshot of where we were, but also I want to yield the floor to them so I don't take up too much time of the board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, President. Frank.
Okay, well, good evening. Appreciate having you give us the opportunity to come and share a few moments with you. So my name is Frank Gonzalez. I've been with ComEd for 33 years. Most of my time has been in the Chicago region. So Maywood office, what we do is we service 28 of the near west communities of Chicago, and then we have Chicago proper. So my responsibility is the Maywood office, the 28 communities, including Riverside. And what we do is I'm the construction manager, and so we take care of all the repairs, all the new facility improvements that are made, along with we have support from our contractors of choice that help us with putting these things together. I have an organization. We're stationed out of 1505 South 1st Avenue, right off 290 in Maywood. And that's where we have over 100 employees that serve this territory, including the O'Hare area. We've had the pleasure to come out now a couple times and visit and make sure that we're giving you the service that you need, the attention that you require, and that's why we're here tonight, to make sure that everybody knows that, number one, our most important goal is the safety and the reliability of your service and to take care of your needs. So, I'm happy to be here. As Corey said, we'll be available after or during the meeting for any comments or questions or concerns that you might have. But by way of introduction, I wanted to introduce myself to you. I've been here in this Maywood area now for the last 4 years and look forward to serving you, beyond, not only tonight, but beyond. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Good evening. As was mentioned, I'm Sean Hughes with Intren. I'm the account manager. ComEd is my customer. I've been with Intren about 8 years. My main job is to make sure that the work that we're completing for ComEd is done according to their spec, and that we have a good communication back and forth. They know what we're doing at all times. So what they asked me to come talk about today was the most recent project that we just completed. For those of you who don't know a lot about aerial systems, the major aerial system that's out there runs the cables on the pole, and they sit on a platform, and you have 3 cables that sit on a shelf. One of the things they do on a storm hardening project is a lot of times they change that out to a spacer cable system, and it really has 2 advantages that we try to act on. The first advantage is it changes that shelf platform. So if you have an incidental contact from tree limbs that are blowing down, instead of landing on top of all 3 phases and causing a short across the phases and possibly bringing those lines down, now we have a cable system that really suspends them in a manner that's not a shelf, that doesn't allow incidental contact across phases, but also at the same time, it's hung on a stringer that runs from pole to pole, so it can take a harder contact from tree limbs. So ComEd really terms this as storm hardening. It's one of those things that we can do is to add some resiliency to the system to allow it to take more of an impact. And the second piece of the spacer cable, not only having a bigger set of a cable and insulation. But one of the things that happens during the storm is you have high winds that come. Those high winds cause the cables to what they call gallop. So the cables can go up and down and kind of the phases can come together. In this spacer cable system that just kind of set in a triangular, a diamond pattern here, it stops the cables from coming together. So really the storm hardening system is really for two reasons. One, to add some more resiliency to the system so it can take more hits from tree limbs, but at the same time stop that cable gallop. So this most recent installation that we've done really would be sitting a little, I think, east of here on Gage, Lawton, and Olmsted. We replaced roughly 48 poles. We took the existing pole, there's a little taller and a little stiffer pole that's out there, and then changed the cables out to the new Hendrix system. It started originally in April timeframe, and that's when we took care of the first overhead piece, and then just recently we had what we call 3 underground dips. So an overhead to an underground conversion tying in a bunch of different systems. So most recently that is the pieces that we completed. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions about what the Hendrix system is or where we're sitting. All right, so in terms of that project itself, the project is what we call electrically complete, meaning the system is live and has been cut over. Right now we're working up any of the resolution issues that we have on landscaping and making sure everything is put back the way we found it. Well, if there's no questions, thank you for letting me come.
Could I ask, I just happen to live on Gage, so I've experienced exactly what you're talking about. So the work you did was really limited to that area of the village. Is that going to be done in other areas of the village, or was there a specific need right where that work was done?
So, I mean, I can speak to the portion that I'm understanding. So, my understanding, when these systems are really identified for what systems goes in, every year ComEd will run a reliability test to identify what outages have occurred, how many customers have been affected, and then they can go 2 places with that. One is to redo the infrastructure, and the second is to install some of those distribution automation devices that Corey talked about previously. So, I know this system, with the way the tree line is set, turned out to be a perfect candidate for the Hendrix system. Now, I don't have really the schedule of the work that's going to come out. If there's any more Hendrix in this system, that I don't know.
Corey,
But yes, I have it.
To answer Trustee's question, we've actually installed 3,550 feet of spacer cable throughout Riverside, mostly on the east side. The section that is desperately being impacted, it's slated to receive 4,350 feet of spacer cable this calendar year, which is basically what Sean just kind of outlined that we just completed. And then in 2017, to answer your question more directly, yes, we will be installing 8,450 more feet of spacer cable throughout the Riverside to kind of strengthen our system throughout the entire village.
And when you quote those feet, does that translate into a certain number of poles, or is that kind of random when you replace the poles, or do you replace poles when you're doing the lines as well?
Yeah, Sean, go ahead.
So just an average number, so usually the length between poles is somewhere around 278 feet. And as part of the installation, yes, you change out the poles. So you could take just a rough estimate of, say, the 8,000 feet divided by around 270, and that will tell you about the poles that are going to be replaced along with that type of work.
My request in the future, there was no notice given that our property was being entered and what work was being done. So it made the village look bad, and the residents were definitely impacted by that. So we really request that next year when you start that work, we give some notice, or so we can get a flash bulletin out to the entire village so they know what's going on. I mean, you can kind of figure it out when you see poles in your front yard, but that was kind of the only indication we had that this work was going on. So.
Yeah, my apology for that, and that was part of our scope of work. So as we send the permits out to the village, we definitely could have done a better job of 2 weeks ahead of time just knocking on doors, letting them know what was coming, as opposed to either seeing flags in your yard or poles in your yard.
Okay.
I apologize.
Thank you.
You're correct.
Mr. Foster, can I ask you, you said that this year you're still going to do another 4,350 feet?
That'll be completed this calendar year.
And where's that work going to be done?
That's along Delta 516.
That's the
which is
Burlington?
Street.
Okay.
Yeah. You have a lot of trees that are potentially impacting. I had the opportunity, President, to walk.
You need to be behind.
Had the opportunity to walk with Chief Buckley as well as your village manager, the community when I first started. And they kind of showed some problematic areas that ComEd is definitely going to take a look at with our vegetation management team.
Are we going to hear from Mr. Henry also, or can we open it up to?
Yeah, Mr. Henry is available to answer any.
But do you have
field
any
questions.
kind of prepared remarks at all? No. Well, with that, why don't we thank you for the presentation, and I know we do have some residents here who would like to have some input while you're here.
Okay.
So, would anyone like to address the board at this time? Mr. Boutskakis.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Boutskakis, owner of Riverside Foods grocery store located at 48 East Burlington. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. President Selves, Manager Francis, and trustees, I'd like to ask for your assistance regarding the frequent power outages we experience in Riverside, more specifically on Burlington Street. As you already know, Riverside has a historic track record of power outages. Early last year, thanks to the support of our village manager and President Sells, we were able to meet with ComEd representative who showed us that we experienced 7 complete power outages in the course of just over a year. At that time, the representative confirmed that there was an extraordinary amount and that there were various causes for the outages. We were told that ComEd would look into improving service and possibly rerouting some of the local power grid to alleviate the load. The last few weeks have been especially detrimental, as we all know. On Saturday, July 30th and Monday, August 2nd, we experienced complete power outages, along with many other ComEd customers in Riverside. We again experienced power flickering on Friday, August 5th. Within just a few days combined, we had to close our doors for a total of 9 regular operating business hours, which cost us an estimated loss of over $11,000. This total is a combination of loss of revenue, labor costs, and equipment repairs. It may not be as evident, but when we experience flickering power outages, our compressors are easily damaged. There are electrical contacts and time clocks that get fried due to power going in and out so strongly. Perhaps the most detrimental was the loss of business during peak hours. We had to turn away many of our regular customers who ultimately had to take their business out of town to get their groceries. The village and the board have been tremendous in supporting us in the past, and once again we ask for your assistance in working with ComEd to improve our service. We have been a family-owned and operated local business for over 35 years and hope to be a contributing part of our local economy and community for at least another 35 years. Thank you for your time and letting me speak about this.
Thank you, Peter. So, Mr. Foster, to follow up on that, you mentioned that 64% of the outages we've had has been along this Burlington feeder, and you said that 50% of those were weather or vegetation related.
Yes.
What were the other 50?
The other percentages kind of vary as it relates to cause. One of the major drivers of that cause would be equipment failure. And then another particular driver that was notably mentioned in terms of any planned or associated outages or associated with the work that's being done. So if we had to move a load in terms of customers down, Michael, I think I'm explaining this correctly, we would basically cause another intentional outage of customers in order to do necessary repairs in a certain area of the village.
So if you're going to do something like that, is there some way you can give advance notices to businesses like Riverside Foods so that they know that this planned outage is coming?
Yes, we actually did communicate with your village manager as well as your chief in terms of improving the lines of communication. We do have a system in place, but in the event of an emergency, we normally, typically, I believe, we notify public safety first, and then, but any type of planned outage, we certainly will do our due diligence in terms of notifying all the impacted customers.
So can you summarize for me what kind of the total work effort is going to be to try to reduce these outages along the Burlington feeder?
That's exactly what Sean was kind of outlining in terms of the work that needs to continue in terms of the 8,000 or so feet that we need to install in terms of the storm hardening process. So that way your lines will be a little bit more resilient in terms of if it's impacted by vegetation or storms, you will have the
What
bandwidth.
what about the other part, though, the equipment failure part? Is there equipment here that's dated that needs to be replaced?
We're certainly making assessments annually and walking the community to ensure that if there is antiquated equipment, that we address those concerns with it. But largely, vegetation management has been really the key because we have invested significantly in our infrastructure thus far.
Mr. Valerie?
I live on Delaplane, and I've lived in my house for 30 years, 28 years, and I can count on my hand how many times I've lost power. I mean, I think probably I lost power 5 times, and I don't think I've ever lost it for more than a few hours, so I consider myself very fortunate. There's no difference between where I live and trees, because we have the lines come through, trees going all the way up and down Delaplane and across my neighbor's yard. One time a tree did take down a power line that crossed the street, which you and I had talked about.
Yes.
But what I don't understand is why are there, I mean, I know that there's, Northgate has had numerous outages. Gage has had numerous outages. Northwood along 26th Street. It just seems like there's sections of our town that are affected a lot more than other sections of our town, and I can't buy that those sections have more foliage than other sections. So it has to be the equipment or the amount of houses that are on those loads. That maybe there's, I remember a few years ago someone came and told us, 20 years ago, you'd have a house with, maybe a refrigerator and a thing. Now today you have a house with an air conditioner, a dishwasher, and everything like that, and it takes much more loads. So is there any attempt to take some of those places that have more outages and I don't know if this is the correct terminology, but get them different feeder lines or newer feeder lines, or split the feeder lines so there's not so much load on those particular places?
Sure, and that's what we're attempting to do with improving your Delta 516, which is basically the Burlington Street feeder line. That feeder line is the largest feeder for Riverside, is my understanding. So we're making those system improvements to your largest feeder at this current time. And we are scheduled to complete that process by the end of calendar year 2017. And Frank, did you have anything to add to that process, or Michael, did you have anything to add to that process?
Mr. Henry, it looks like you have something to say.
Yeah. Michael? Okay.
Again, I'm Michael Henry from ComEd, and to your point, I remember when I was a kid, we had one television, and the antenna was me, because I had to stand there and move the hanger around. You remember the old days with that. So nowadays, everybody's improved and we've done things to our home. So at ComEd, what we do is every year we do what's called, so there's a difference between the reliability, which is the performance of your feeders, and the amount of power that's being used. So we do capacity improvements. So we do studies to determine how much power is being used, because we'll come in and say, hey, we have to add another line. There are pocketed areas, like you mentioned, that have more outages than others, and that's why we've slated for 2017 the other 2 programs. So it's about roughly 8,300 feet, but it's going to be in increments, so it's in different places. It won't be contiguous. The other piece of it that you have to understand, and you probably don't, because sometimes it's tough for me to wrap my arms around it, you may have a feeder that runs through your community that goes out to another community. So you may not see us working, or you may not see us trimming the trees in your community. We're doing it someplace else, but that affects you too. So to answer your question, yes, we do capacity improvements. We look at the amount of power that's being used, as well as the performance of the power that's coming through.
So while you're up there, I'm still not quite sure I get exactly what the timeline is for the Burlington. So in terms of the 4350, is it Hendrickson? Is that the correct term? Hendricks. So that's going to be done along Burlington this year.
That is complete.
Right? That's completed?
That's complete.
Yes.
I thought you said there was going to be another 4,350 that's going to be done by the end of the calendar year.
No, the total 4,350, cumulative amount of feet that's been.
So you've already done 30,
completed is 4,350.
okay, so you've already done 3,550, so you just have a little bit more to do.
3,550 was on your other feeder.
The other feeder.
On the south side of town.
So the Burlington work is essentially done?
No, you also had 8,400.
That's also on that same
slated
feeder.
to begin, slated to begin in calendar year 2017,
Got
President.
it, got it. And that's still on the same Burlington feeder?
So that'll bring the total length to over 12,000 feet.
So knowing that there is this repeated problem that's affecting not only homeowners, but significantly our businesses, because that's our main business district,
Sure.
is there some kind of backup system where you can reroute power to that area in case of an outage? Is that possible?
What's the redundancy on Delta 516? Do you know?
What I can say is that, very quickly, so what we do is we have a cycle of feeder inspections where we have a group of employees that go out and they do inspections on a cyclical 3-year cycle, and they go through those and they identify, I think to your point, someone was talking about, infrastructure, older equipment that needs to be adjusted and needs to be upgraded. So we do that on a 3-year basis, and then those, what we call corrective maintenance tasks, then are brought over to my organization. We categorize them, prioritize them, and then we go out and then we work them systematically through the year. In terms of backup, every system, this distribution automation that we've put in, what that does is it's an automation where you tie 2 feeders together, and what it does is it quickly reduces the time of an outage. So someone who may have seen a 3 to 4 hour outage in the past, if there's distribution automation on there, it's a reclosure system that automatically identifies an outage, and within seconds, some of the customers are picked up, and then their service is restored. And then what it does is it reduces the window of an outage. And what it does then is then we can zero in on that specific area of that outage and focus our efforts on that, rather than having to start at the station or start at a midpoint or start at the end and start inspecting the feeder to find out where the problem is. So those are some of the things that you're seeing and hearing that are being done in this particular case. And then on the back of it, you see our folks, the ComEd crews, you see us out replacing cross arms, upgrading transformers, fixing wire, clearing some vegetation. We also have the veg groups that come in. They do the same thing. They have a 3-year cycle, and they come through the different areas, and then they clear the tree limbs and branches in those areas. So that's what's going on with that. I think we've got some good follow-ups that we need to get back to you folks in terms of what does that 2017 footprint look like for us to get that system so that you have it, so that you can see it, and we can communicate with your customers. I think we hear everybody loud and clear. We have to communicate better. We need to communicate faster when we're in the area working, and some improvements that we made, so that not only you folks but your constituents can hear and see and visually see this equipment and say, okay, I know what that's doing now and how that's helping the community. So those are some of the things that we're doing in terms of that.
I really appreciate all the comments that you're all making and that you all came here tonight. But I have to say, if I'm Peter at Riverside Foods and I'm hearing that this is going to be done sometimes in 2017, that doesn't give me a lot of comfort. So, I just ask to follow up on what Trustee Sedley said. There are outages and there are outages. And our business district is a critical part of our community, and they can't take it. They can't take these 9 hours. $11,000 is a lot of money to a small business.
Yep, understood.
So.
And I think collectively, I think we owe it to the folks at Riverside Foods and all your businesses to do some follow up, and hopefully what you've seen in this group right here is we're serious. We hear what you're saying, and that's why we're here tonight, and that's why we've been literally walking the neighborhoods, with your village manager and your chief, to make sure that we're tightly watching and monitoring that. So my hope is for everyone here in the room and those watching, that you will see improved reliability and accountability from this team.
And I do hope that our residents watching this do get that. The ComEd has been out here this past week with Chief Buckley and Manager Francis, literally walking the streets. looking at the issues. So we feel like we're off to a good start. We've got a new team in part, and so we'll just hope to see good things in the future. And thank you very much for coming. Did you have something, Ms. Franzo? Of course. Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez.
My name's Carol Franzo. I live at 207 Gage. I've already discussed my concerns with Mr. Henry, and he wrote everything down, so I didn't have to come up here, but I lied, so I'm here. There's one little detail that hasn't been taken care of. One of the lucky residences has a pole in my yard, and it's got 4 cables coming down with the yellow safety things on it, and it's, I understand. I mean, what are you going to do? My concern now is, and I thought of this after the fact, is there's all these other wires coming off of it too, Comcast, AT&T, other cables that come down. They were never addressed, and so they're rolled up, ready to be addressed, and they're laying in my yard. And I think it's just a matter of maybe calling the people at those agencies. I'm sure that's something you would initiate, as opposed to me calling and getting those wires secured onto the pole, as opposed to just sitting in a roll at the bottom of the pole.
What is the address?
207 Gage. Thank you.
I think that's an important thing too, because to the layperson, they don't know whether it's a power wire or a cable wire or a telephone wire, and it's very unnerving when people, I've been asked multiple times to come over and just say, calm down, that's a cable wire, things like that. So I think that would be very helpful too, even if you tagged them, right where we tag them, where they say, you know, not energized power or something like that, because I know it's very disconcerting when you see stuff hanging around there. I got one question for you guys real quick. Do you guys have a list of all the addresses in Riverside that have medical power needs? My father was a line superintendent for Nebraska Public Power, and he had this, I mean, it's way back in the old days, graph paper with every address that had somebody that had some sort of an oxygen machine or anything like that. And so that when the power was out in that area, that they would certainly know how to go and check on that person. And I don't know whether it's your responsibility or whether he just did it out of the kindness of his heart, or whether it's something that, you know, Chief Buckley and our EMT folks could do. But I worry about when we have the number of power outages we do, the folks that have some ailments, and making sure that we're paying special attention to those village folks. So I don't know if you have a list or not, but
Chief
it'd be
Buckley,
something
do
pretty
you have
interesting.
any information on that?
Yeah, I was just talking with Dave Crow from the police department. We do have in our CAD system, if people do call and say they're on home oxygen or they have special needs, they do report it, and we do list in the CAD, so if that address does pop up, it'll show that on the CAD report.
Do you have a way to communicate that to these guys when we have an outage or not?
We do.
Okay.
You know, Corey Foster and I have he just started.
August
1st.
You introduced me to him, appreciate that. So
He actually got indoctrinated on July 30th when we had the outage on Quincy, and I started calling him right away, and he was very responsive, even before he started actually in his position. So yes, we do convey that to them, and
Good.
we do let them know that we have a person on home oxygen. We also go there to the residents and see how long they have, and if there's anything we can do to assist them in that period. If it is going to be a prolonged outage, they might get transported to the hospital where there will be power, or we'll look at alternative means to assist them. So.
okay, at least a method to communicate with them, so
Yes.
they're not sitting around for 2-3 hours thinking it's going to be a couple, 20 minutes or something, and then it's multiple times.
Correct.
And I know
Okay.
that ComEd has a couple of those individuals are within Riverside, because as part of, for certain village employees, we have access to the system when there's outage for us to tell us where it's at, and to somewhat the mapping that you can get online is just a little bit more information that the typical resident would be able to see. And in that, it actually shows anyone that has contacted ComEd with regard to certain medical issues that they need to be cognizant of, and so ComEd has that listed, and whether or not they're part of the outage. If they've notified ComEd.
They've notified,
of it.
yeah.
Yes, so part of it is too incumbent upon the resident to notify ComEd of it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from our residents or from the trustees? Yes, ma'am, please.
My name is
You need to come up to the podium, please.
Hi, my name is Jean Zajac, and I live on Olmsted. So are you saying that Olmsted and Gage, all the work is done there?
So in terms of the electrical work, the poles, yes, there's still restoration work to be completed.
Okay, but last month, I think, and the weather was not bad, I don't know if there was squirrels or what, electricity went out maybe 3 times. The weather was not bad. And it went out, it didn't go out for an hour or 2 hours. It went out for quite a couple hours. Can you give me a reason for that, or what do you, I mean, and I did talk to the Intron, 20-year Intron guys. They were really good. They were really nice. They replaced my grass or whatever. But he said, you should, quote, you should have no problems from now on.
And I can't speak for the individual specific details of the outage.
Sir, you need to go up there. You need to share the mic.
Yeah, and I apologize, off the top of my head, I can't speak for the individual details of the outage. There are a couple things to be cognizant of. One of them is, so what we put up in the backyards and what we put up on the Hendrix system is really isolated to that individual piece. Now, that cable is always going to be fed from somewhere, so there could be external outages that cause the line coming in to be damaged. But again, I can't speak to the individual piece. I don't have the specific details to that.
So every time my electricity goes out, I have to call Miss Francis again, right? Is that what you're saying? And you'll...
Or call I believe 1-800 is.
I don't know. I tried calling you guys one time to ask about like who I can talk to, and I pretty much got an answer like, sorry, nobody.
Okay, I'll make sure that you have all our...
Do you have like a card or something?
Yeah, I'll make sure that you...
All right.
Isn't the
And
smart
we'll
meter...
get those contact numbers put on the village
But
website.
I thought the whole reason for the smart meters is if you lose power, the smart meter tells ComEd right away. There's no, and I remember, you know, there's no reason, there's no need for you to call. Don't call the phone number. We know you're out. Is that still the case? The smart meter does that work?
Michael will address that.
The smart meter was installed. The reason it's smart, it talks to us. It can also talk to you. You can go online. But of course, when you get a power outage, your computers aren't working. We do have a system. It's a little app. If you got smartphones, you can go on here. And this is better than calling ComEd. Now, let me back up a minute. You do need to call ComEd. What we did when we installed the system, what we said was, when the whole system is completed, you won't need to call us. We've got another year left, right? So in the meantime, we do urge you to call us to let us know. However, when that meter stops turning, we know about it, but we want you to report the outage. I've got an app on here, and I'll have Corey come back and demonstrate so I don't take up the time. Oh, that's not us. I thought that you were showing our app. Like, hey, thanks. But there's an app. If you go on here, it asks you a couple of questions. And my personal account is on here. I'll let you look at it. It doesn't matter. And you can see where it says report an outage. You press that button, it asks you 2 questions. Are your lights all out or are they partially out? Then it asks you another question. Are your neighbor's lights out or just your lights? When you press that button, you bypassed all of the phone calls. It goes directly to our control center, the folks who actually dispatch a truck to your house.
Okay.
And this will also, when you report it, it'll report back to you information on the updates.
And we can
on
get
the
that
outage
app
itself.
from the App Store?
That's correct.
ComEd?
It's a free ComEd app.
Just go to ComEd, or Google ComEd at the App Store. And you can,
The App Store.
okay.
Yeah, you can get it from the App Store, whatever kind of phone you got. So that's my commercial.
As people in the audience, I'll get their phones out.
And I would highly recommend tracking that app down. I have it, and it is nice to know. And that when you're traveling, especially, you know your power's out, and you can have your neighbor check in your house or whatever you might need to be done. But it is pretty effective. The restore times are not always, reliable, of course, but we understand that, sometimes you run into other issues once you get into it. But the communication is getting better, but it is easier than calling an 800 number, that's for sure.
Anything else for these gentlemen? Thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight and addressing our concerns. We appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Foster.
Thank you. Nice meeting you too, sir.
Thank you very much.
I have your card. You on speed dial.
Thank you, friend. Thanks for having us. I'll take one. Perfect. Cheers.
Okay.
I hope he's turning it down.
He is turning it down.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
First time it hasn't been cold in here.
Thank you again. And just as a quick aside, I also would like our residents to know the work that Chief Buckley and Manager Francis have been doing on this. They have been all over this with comments, so thanks to both of you for pressing it. Next up is a presentation on Everbridge, and I didn't realize this was a company when I first saw it, but there's a company called Public Stuff, and that is by Kevin Bradco. Can somebody pull those doors back, please?
Another app. Another app.
Oh, okay. They'll work their way outside here.
Good evening, everyone. As I was introduced, my name is Kevin Karadko, crew leader for Department of Public Works, battalion chief on the fire department. At a recent conference call, I just made it easier and said I'm a Riverside specialist. Going back over 100 years when my family moved here, to me being born here, being raised here, and now my wife and I owning a home in town, I know a little bit about the town. And in my two roles here, both Chief Buckley and Director Bailey have allowed me to perform well in both of those roles, and with Village Manager Jessica Francis, she really allows me to excel. So about a year ago, she said, I have a great idea for you. Why don't you join this team that's part of the GIS Consortium, which is what we are a member village of, and meet together with this team and decide what needs can be solved if we work together as a team, because every town out there has the same issues that we do. That's what we found out. One of the main things that this team, when we came together, realized was we need a better way to allow the residents to let us know about issues out in the street, out in the field, just around town that we can't always see because we can't be everywhere all the time. So after this team was only supposed to get together for about 8 weeks, and we got together originally last August, and we are finally launching over a year later. But anyways, as a team, we came together and we found the best product suited for all of our town's needs was Public Stuff, which is a product presented by the company Excella. They allowed us in each town that bought into it. We got a great deal, I guess you could say, because we bought in bulk with a bunch of other towns. But the great thing about Excella is they allow us to customize it to what we want. So a few of us made a team here with a bunch of village employees, and we came up with Riverside Responds. As you can see on the board, it's a mobile app. So the guy from ComEd kind of had a nice little segue of apps. Riverside is joining the app world. Riverside Responds is available on Google Play and the Apple iStore. Is that what it's called? I'm not into technology that much. But it's downloadable. It's a free download. And what it is, it's a citizen request management system. If any of us, residents and non-residents, can access this app. They see a pothole, they see a parking complaint, see an animal in the road, any issue that we might not be able to see around the clock, they can log onto the app and let us know. Gives you real-time tracking and reporting. What we all want these days is I want to know that I'm being heard right away. You order on Amazon, you order through FedEx, you get an email right away saying thank you for your order, and it confirms. This is very similar. You will receive an email or a text notification thanking you for your request, and then it'll give you real-time updating on it's been received, it's in progress, and it's been completed. Another great thing about this, I'm not a big believer in smartphones because they can track you everywhere you go if you keep your Wi-Fi or anything on. But as you can see on this screen, the little blue dot is the actual phone itself. The little orange dot, I guess you want to say, is where the actual issue was. So let's say I was driving by the village hall today and I saw a pothole. By the time I got to a safe area to park and use my phone, I can move the little geolocating device to where the actual pothole was. Maybe I don't know the address, so I'm just going to hit geolocate myself. There's a pothole that I'm standing right in front of. Don't need to know exactly where I am. However, if there's something in front of my house and I'm not hooked up to Wi-Fi or I don't have the best smartphone, I can simply type in my address and it'll locate right to that area. Allows you to snap real-time photos. As you can see, the issue on the screen is a dead animal. I did not do that on purpose. That was just the first one I clicked on. So let's say there's a parking complaint. It's very easy for someone to call the police dispatch center and say, I have a parking complaint. When the police get out there, they might not be able to determine what the parking issue is. Someone can snap a photo and send it to us. This is my issue. Issue type, you can switch that at any time. If you clicked on the wrong one, like I did, I can switch that to parking complaint, pothole issue, anything of the big list, which I'll get into when I actually go on the site. You could actually add a brief description if you want. If it's a pothole, you can give actual dimensions, sizes, and finally, you can make it the submission public or private. If you do not want other people on the app or on the site seeing what you're reporting, you can switch that to private. However, it is nice at being public, because if you see a signpost that's off kilter, you can look on the actual app and see if anyone else has reported that yet. Kind of creates less workload for the system. If we just get one report on it, you can see that someone else made the request. If you're like me and you do not trust Facebook, you can create your own login and it will be remembered on your phone, or you can log in through Facebook. As I said earlier, you can receive your notification through email or text, and this is only through the mobile app. There is, for the people who are less advanced in technology like myself, there is an actual website. This is the actual website for Riverside Response. The link is available on the village website. This site is available on the village website. The great thing about the actual using the website, you do not have to log in or create an account. You can do it by just going on the site. We will make permits, inspections. I want to schedule a fire inspection. Fire department's easy to pick on. Click on it. Again, if you know your address, you can actually type it in. Say I'm maybe a contractor. I don't know exactly where I'm at. I don't know the actual address, but I know the map of the town. I can go right over onto the map, zoom in, click where I'm actually at. Give it a brief description, and again, make it public or private. What's great here is once you hit submit, it's going to ask for an address, but once you hit submit, it goes to the proper department. Public Works isn't going to get a fire inspection request. Fire department's not going to get a pothole repair request. Okay? It's automatically going to go to the proper department. That is so far for Riverside Response. That is about it. I will open it up. I hope I didn't go too fast, but
sounds like a great system. Questions from anyone? Mr. Sen?
I think it's great, Kevin. I really appreciate this. It's going to become a real asset when we get used to using it. How is it handled on the back end, though? Who is physically receiving the messages on the other side? Do you have a designated employee? Is it a email generated to check the website, or how do you follow up on it?
Each department, right now, each department head will get a copy of the issue. As we move forward, let's say it's a tree, someone has a tree in the parkway and they think it needs to be looked at, it'll go directly to Forrester Mike Collins. Okay. And he has a smartphone, he has the app, it'll go right to him. When he goes out there, he looks at it, he can click, it's in progress, complete it, and it'll go right to the resident.
So the employee will get the notification from the app?
Yes. And not every department has village-issued smartphones.
Sure.
Like not every employee in Public Works does. So right now, it'll go to myself and Ed Bailey, and then we'll follow up on it. Once work is complete, we can log in and say it's been completed.
I think it's great.
But just to follow up on that, just so folks aren't. So in case of an emergency, if somebody had an emergency, this is not what you want to do.
This is more of like a 311 system. Right. What we had previously in the past several years was a thing called Request Partner. And we looked into it, and I did a test run to every department, request type that you could, and we found out that Karen Byrne was still getting emails, and she hadn't worked here. So that's how outdated the system was, and so I think this is great because it gives you the mobile app ability plus the website ability.
I think this is wonderful. You guys did a great job.
So the name you're looking at is Riverside Response?
Yes. If you go on the App Store, sorry. If you go on the App Store, you type in Riverside, I think 5 things come up. If you type in Riverside Response, 1 thing comes up.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Any other questions? Audience? No? Thank you.
Snitch on your neighbors with this, can
Do it privately.
Yeah, I don't want to say yes or no.
The question was, can you snitch on your neighbors?
But if say your neighbor has a dead tree, but possibly an ash tree that they haven't addressed yet, you can let us know to come out and check it. And they won't know that it came from, if you click private.
I guess like one concern, like if you had a disgruntled neighbor who didn't like what you're doing in their yard, and I mean every 5 minutes they're sending something to the police.
There is an abuse protection if someone logs in and puts in the same thing over X amount of days, or logs in so many times throughout the day, it kind of red flags it and says, hold on.
Okay.
And then it alerts the village there's something going on here. It's kind of like to prevent spam. So you don't have someone coming up and saying, come look at my store out in India or whatever. It does have spam protection against it.
Just worried about resource allocation and
Yeah.
tax departments not frivolous.
And same thing, say to Public Works and I get the same request 17 times, it'll kick out most of them, especially if it's coming from one person.
Okay.
But on the same side, say it is a gas lamp that just got knocked over and no one called 911 or anything. If we get 17 from 17 different people,
You gotta see that.
yeah, you gotta go check this out. So.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
The second part to this, excuse me, sorry, is a company called Everbridge, which we contracted through. Dave Kroll was key in it also. If you want to be sorry, it's up here. So Everbridge is the company, and just like Riverside Responds or Excella, they allow us to customize it to what we want. And we came up with Riverside Alert System, which is kind of going to replace, some of you might remember Code Red. It's kind of like a reverse 911 system. And Riverside Alert System will allow us to also update Riverside eFlash, okay, to a more modern type of platform. Currently, when we send out eFlash, it goes to everyone that signs up for it. The great thing about Riverside Alert System is, let's say there's a main break at 347 Herrick, and 10 homes are going to be without water for about an hour. We can actually go on the mapping system, click those 10 homes, and just those 10 people will be notified that their water's going to be out. Also, on the mapping system, say we are going to be repaving Lot 2 over on Pine Avenue, we can actually, if they link their account up to Riverside Alert System, we can click on each one of those parking spaces and notify them in 72 hours you'll have permission to park overnight on the street because we're going to be paving your parking lot. Stuff like that. It really gives us a lot of detailed, honed-in information that we can just send to certain parts of town if we don't want to blast it throughout everywhere.
If we're signed up already for the
eFlash,
do we have to sign up for this also?
I'll give it.
I would recommend, because, for example, the alert system, you can sign up with a text, you can sign up with your home phone, you can so you have different options. If there's a preference as to how you want to receive certain notifications, you can go ahead and do so.
So that's everbridge.com?
We have a link now on the village website, so if you just go for the Riverside Alert System, you go to the village main homepage. If you look on the lower right-hand side, it's actually in red. Both for the Riverside Response and the new alert system. And then once you sign up, even though we're doing a revamp of the village website, once you sign up for these 2 new systems, that will then transfer over when we go live with the new village website as well.
But you have to sign up for the 2. You have to sign up for Riverside Response as well as Riverside Alert. You sign up for one, doesn't get you both.
It's 2 separate companies, so yes. So you have 2 separate accounts because one is geared to just work order system, analytics, gathering of data, versus the alert system is just notifying you of different things.
And if I can add one thing now that we are kind of talking about analytics, on the backside, any requests that we get, we can now track. And Ed can provide reports of this is how many potholes were repaired, this is how many streetlights were repaired, stuff like that. Any department can pretty much run a report very quickly for our analytics. It's actually really, both systems are really great. And I'm not advanced in technology, I'm saying that, so.
Any other questions for Mr. Cracker? Awesome.
In closing, I just want to say it's an honor to work for both departments, and thank you for continuing to allow me to serve the village I live in. So.
We're glad to have you.
Thanks for all your work on this.
Sure, thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the board this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to reports of village officers. First up is the village president's report. Really, the only item I have tonight is unfortunately, a sad one. Last week, and this follows on the loss of Scuffy Gross. Last week, we lost Dennis Sadilak, who was a friend and mentor to many people in this community, certainly a friend and mentor to me. He had an extraordinary record of public service in many areas, but I just wanted to highlight what he did for our village. He first was elected to the village Board of Trustees in 1989, and he served 2 consecutive terms as village trustee before he had an unsuccessful run for village president in 1997. But that did not deter him. 2 years later, in 1999, he ran again and was elected to a 3rd term as village trustee, and I'm wondering if that might not be some kind of record of service for our community. And if that wasn't enough, he also served on the Riverside Library Board of Trustees, including being the president of that board for 1 year. He was an active member of the Riverside Township Lions Club, a fellow Lion to some of us up here, and also served as that organization's president. And in terms of his work at Riverside Presbyterian Church, he was an elder and trustee. And more than 3 decades ago, he founded a men's support group that still meets once a week. So as you can see, really anywhere that Dennis went, leadership followed him. And he was a very selfless giver of his time and his talents to our village. When the Landmark asked his wife, Mary Ann, about him, she commented on how he, quote, would encourage people to get involved and to be kind. And I think that last part says an immeasurable thing about him. He was a dear friend, a mentor, and his legacy of public service and his legacy of many public and private kindnesses will not be forgotten. So on behalf of the board and village staff, we send our thoughts and prayers to Mary Ann and his family, and rest in peace, Dennis. And that's all I have this evening. Ms. Francis.
I just have one item this evening. I just want to remind residents that we are resurfacing on Burlington, and I would just say to use caution while driving down Burlington. We anticipate that the resurfacing will be completed by Monday, weather permitting. There will be flaggers there because there will be intermittent closures. While all the equipment is out on the streets, the street can get a bit narrow, so I would just ask that residents use caution and be patient. And that is it. Thank you.
Next up is the approval of the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone needs removed for discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Collins.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ballerini. Please call the roll.
Trustee Ballerini.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Setterfield.
Aye.
Trustee Lumsden.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up are reports of departments, commissions, and trustee liaisons. Are there any liaison reports this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. We have 2 resolutions, or 2 ordinances before us this evening. One is with regard to vacation rentals. The other is with regard to the beekeeping. Given that we are down 2 trustees this evening, I just wanted to ask the trustees if you still wanted to entertain these or if you would like to wait until the next meeting when we are at full strength.
If someone has a concern, I have a problem with it.
Have any of the trustees asked for us to
No?
put it up?
I'm asking if you want to go ahead and deal with it tonight or wait until the other ones are back. I don't know that there's a precedent time issue on either one of them. So.
The only thing that I worry about is the pressing time that's coming on our agenda, because now we're going into budget. I mean, we're going to
That's an issue.
pass the CIP tonight to look onto, we're just going to do an overview, and then we're going to discuss that more, and then we get the budget. So
Well, I think that we've heard from both Doug and Ellen in the past. I think you guys probably already know kind of where they stand on these issues anyway. So, okay. So first up then is an ordinance amending the village code of the Village of Riverside, Illinois, and the Village of Riverside zoning ordinance relative to vacation rentals. Ms. Abt.
Thank you. Last year in 2015, it came to the village's attention that property owners in the village were hosting their properties with services such as Airbnb and vacation rental by owner. These services allow property owners to advertise their homes as available for vacation rentals, and currently our village code does not address this particular kind of use. We do have regulations for bed and breakfasts and hotel motels, but nothing for vacation rental, which is a little bit different model than a bed and breakfast, where the owners may or may not be on the premises during the rental time and typically do not offer meals. Staff believe that these type of uses can have an impact on adjacent properties, and in fact, we had received complaints about some of these types of uses. We had sent out violation notices to the people who were running Airbnbs, and some of them had actually come to the village trustees and asked that we would consider amending our ordinance to allow vacation rentals. So back in December of 2015, you directed staff to take a look at this, and we put together a draft ordinance for you to look at. You forwarded that on to the Planning and Zoning Commission to conduct a public hearing because there were some zoning regulations that needed to be added. And so they conducted a public hearing on May 25th. And some of the commissioners were generally unsure about allowing this type of use in our residential districts, even as a special use, which is what it was proposed as, and continue the public hearing to allow for additional discussion. So the commission continued to review, actually over a couple more meetings, these regulations for vacation rentals. And they made several changes to the draft text based on those discussions. So included in some of those changes were limiting the use of the dwelling unit as a vacation rental to no more than 60 days in a calendar year, requiring the owner or their agent to be within 30 miles of the property to be able to respond to any issues during the rental period. Their contact information also must be clearly posted at the vacation rental and provided to the village in case of any sort of emergencies or if the village is called with any sort of complaint. They also asked to remove the separate parking requirements that we had proposed for vacation rentals. And so now the ordinance just references that any overnight parking must be in accordance with the village code. They also asked that the restrictions on providing food be loosened a little bit to allow for providing food and beverages that are prepackaged and sealed by the manufacturer for individual servings. And they also asked that the definition of vacation rentals exclude house swapping, which would be where like two different people in two different towns basically swap houses to do vacations in the other person's locale. So, you know, if you're going to swap houses with somebody in Myrtle Beach and they're going to come here and stay at your house. No money actually changes hands, but apparently it's a thing, and they didn't want to necessarily make somebody who decides to do that for kind of a one-off thing have to get registered as a vacation rental. So those adjustments were made to the code, and they recommended approval of that last month. The Preservation Commission has also reviewed the proposed text amendment and found that the proposed text amendment would not have any negative impact on our National Historic Landmark designation or on the general plan of Riverside. So you have the draft text before you. The zoning changes relate to use, so it adds vacation rental as a use in our definitions and adds it to our use list. So it would be a special use in the residential districts and a permitted use in the commercial districts. Originally, as I said before, there had been additional parking regulations to provide additional parking spaces for the vacation rental use, but the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that that was a little bit onerous and asked that that be removed. So the ordinance that is before you does not have any specific parking requirements. They had also made, as I said, some recommended changes to the business regulations that we had put together for vacation rentals. So we have an entire chapter that's dedicated to bed and breakfasts. Now we have a new chapter that's dedicated to vacation rentals, and that's where it goes over the licensing requirements and posting of like the contact information, how often they have to register, also providing us with a list of how many nights that the vacation rental unit was actually rented and the number of guests they utilize, so we can make sure that they're not going over that 60-day period. Also talks about if there's any nuisance complaints repeatedly on there, that we do have the right to revoke their license. And So those are the two, they made recommended changes to those, but those aren't necessarily under their purview to have a public hearing on, but as they related to the use itself, they had made some recommendations to those, which are incorporated in the ordinance that you have before you. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. You have the full draft text in front of you. I would like to remind you that it is within the actual ordinance. There is another draft on there that's part of the findings of fact that has the last iteration that they looked at, but does not include the changes that they had recommended at their last meeting, just so you are looking at the correct one.
So I'd ask for a motion to approve an ordinance amending the village code of the Village of Riverside, Illinois, and the Village of Riverside zoning ordinance relative to vacation rentals. Need a motion and a second. No motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Ms. Collins.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Valerie. Discussion.
Could I ask a few questions? You referenced in the material that there were some residents listed in various websites as renting their homes, and they were basically given a cease and desist type letter from the village. On what grounds? Is it specifically prohibited by our code, or what was the grounds on which we asked them to remove their listing?
Because it was not specifically listed as a use, if they wanted to continue, they would have to fall into a category of use that we have. The closest one would be at a bed and breakfast, which would still require them to go through the special use process in order to get approval to do that and in order to get licensed as a bed and breakfast. So I gave them that as their option, that they needed to cease and desist until they obtained the proper licensing and proper zoning approvals for it.
And then I tried to, maybe I missed the first meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission on this, but I'm struggling with why this would be a special use and not a permitted use, and why not, where we wouldn't rely on licensing instead of both, basically.
Well, I think because we have bed and breakfasts as special uses, we tried to mimic that with the vacation rentals. A couple of the commissioners didn't necessarily see a problem with it being a permitted use, but several of them liked that additional level of oversight, that if there is issues, say we allow a couple of them and there do start to be issues, that then we can start addressing that. As the next one comes in, we can actually make conditions as a part of the special use. Okay, here are the conditions of your approval. It also allows for notification of neighbors. So neighbors are notified that this is something that this person is going to be doing in their home, that it's not just going to be a single family home, it is also going to be a vacation rental.
Special use does cost $500?
No, I believe special uses are $1,000.
$1,000?
Yes.
And a public hearing.
And a public.
Yes, and it's a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission with the ultimate approval by the village board.
Yeah, that basically says that you're not going to allow Airbnbs in Riverside. $1,000 is a lot of money, especially if you only get 30 nights a year. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please. I guess my last question then is, we restricted it to certain districts, and I'm wondering why, like R4 and R3 perhaps weren't included as permitted uses. Was there any discussion on why it's only the B1 and B2 that were permitted?
There was a little bit of discussion about that, but I think ultimately there was some commissioners that just, again, had concerns about parking impacts and things like that in the higher density areas like in an R3 and R4. As you hear about some of the problems in the city of Chicago, people being in a multifamily unit or something like that, people having big parties, it being disruptive, constant transiency. So they didn't really get into trying to break it out based on the districts. Ultimately, they decided to just keep it the same in all the residential districts.
Well, I guess I'm personally in favor of allowing this. I think we've made it almost impossible to allow a resident to do it, however, and I think we spent a lot of time and money putting this together as well. So.
Is that because of the special use component?
Yes.
So would you like to have it permitted?
I would recommend that it be a permitted use, yes.
I would second that, I agree.
Would you like to make that motion as an amendment?
I would like to amend the ordinance as recommended to include also a permitted use in all districts of the village.
It's a motion by Mr. Sedovy, second by Mr. Ballerine. Any discussion on the amendment?
Can you explain why the P&Z didn't do that?
Didn't split it?
No, yeah, didn't. Was there any discussion of why they wanted it special use versus permitted use?
There was a certain level of discomfort about just allowing vacation rentals carte blanche. So I think the compromise was, as a special use, it felt safer by many of the commissioners.
Can you answer me one question? Can you tell me what complaints you had?
Parking complaints, noise complaints, concern about the types of people, renting said house, those kinds of complaints.
Mr. Campbell?
Steve Campbell, Fairbank Road. In response to Trustee Sedovy's question, I believe that those are currently prohibited in the residential districts by way of the home-based business is allowed as long as there are not customers coming to your home. And that's why under the current codes it is, I believe, technically illegal and would require some sort of board action to allow it.
Mr. Marsh, you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, that's correct. One of the basis for the issues the village was having with this when it was being done is that there's a general prohibition on commercial activities in the residential districts aside from the home occupations, and this doesn't fit within the home occupation definition.
Was there a threshold, a revenue threshold, or how do you determine if it is a home-based business?
Well, our home-based occupations are defined in our zoning code, and they're, as Mr. Campbell pointed out, they're not the type of businesses where people are coming and going to your property. They're more like online businesses, or I'm an accountant working from home, or those types of things. I have the zoning code here if you want.
Well, no, I trust. So we felt that there was a strong grounds in which we could prohibit this without further action.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, an option would be, if your concern is that the cost of the special use makes it prohibited, we could always have a separate fee for a special use application with regard to vacation rentals that was lower than.
Yeah, but the problem with that is then the cost is not then borne by the person that's running the Airbnb. It's borne by me and you and all the other residents.
But it sounds like given our current code, it can't be a permitted use. Am I hearing that?
Well, it can with the regulations. So if we make it a permitted use in the residential districts, we have authorized that particular commercial activity to occur in our residential zoning districts, just like we have for bed and breakfast and for home occupations.
Okay, so that the overarching prohibition would not apply then.
Right. If we have a specific exception on the books, then the overarching prohibition doesn't apply.
What do some of our neighboring villages do regarding this issue?
There are not a lot of villages that have actually undertaken specific vacation rental ordinances, so they don't necessarily have anything on the books, and most of them similarly address it as a prohibited use if they do get complaints. Because residential districts, it's supposed to be used as a residential use, not as a hotel or bed and breakfast or something along those lines. So.
And some villages have gone as far as strengthening their current ordinance on file to make sure that they're strictly prohibited.
So if anything, you believe that there's a bias towards being more restrictive, not less restrictive with this issue in villages like ourselves?
Similarly situated.
I guess my question would be, just thematically, how is this different than a bed and breakfast?
Bed and breakfast is a special use.
I know, that's what I'm asking Mr. Ballard and Mr.
I think it's a bed and breakfast is a full-time business. This could be someone that's going to be gone for a couple of weeks and that's it. In which case, we're probably encouraging them to not ask for a license and just do it.
I mean, both, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What is the fee for the license?
The fee is $100. It's our base business license fee.
I mean, I've used Airbnb several times, and so has my kids, and you know, I think it's a great way in order to see, you know, the inner workings of a community and the inner workings of a city. So I think they're wonderful. I've never had any problems, and Airbnb, the website itself, as I mentioned this before. I mean, if you don't get, I mean, if you're going to go stay in someone's house, you do your due diligence. You make sure that the house is clean. You make sure that, you know, there's if you're going to be in a car, you make sure there's parking available. If any of those things are not properly spelled out, they get bad reviews, and you don't stay there. So it's really, in a lot of ways, it's a self-policing system. So a lot of the things that we have in here, I mean, like.
Well, but we need to address the amendment first before we get to the other aspects of it.
That goes to my point. I think we're being too restrictive. I think it's something we should promote. I think it's wonderful for our community to open itself up. We're 17 minutes from downtown Chicago. We're a $21 Uber ride. Just to add another great new thing. I mean, it's we live in a great place, and we should be, you know, we should boast about our place. And you know, I've used it in New Orleans several times, and you know, I go back to the same places because I love the neighborhoods. I very seldom even go into the French Quarter. I'll stay out in Marigny and Bywater and the Magazine District. I mean, there's just so many cool places that you get to discover when this is available, and I go back because I like to discover new places. And I think Riverside is something that should be discovered.
So, is there further discussion on the motion to amend? Hearing none, please call the roll on the motion to amend.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Sedley.
Aye.
Trustee Long.
Aye.
Okay, so now we're back to the ordinance as a whole, that amendment.
Okay. A couple questions I have. Again, when I use the vacation rental, I've used them in a couple of different instances, and one is where the young lady that I rented the house from basically vacated the house, and I and two of my friends had the run of her whole home. Under E, it seems like she would have to then sanitize her whole kitchen upon me leaving, as well as throw everything out in her refrigerator and cabinets that's open. Do I read that correctly? If I had run of the complete house.
Yes, essentially. And Sonia and I talked about this a little bit this afternoon because she said you had brought this up. You know, we came to the conclusion there's a difference, and yours may fall somewhere in between rentals where there is nobody living on the premises and they're giving you the run of it, and ones where, you know, maybe they're just renting out a room and they're there continuously. And so we thought it might be a good way to distinguish between the two, to say for vacation rentals where the licensee does not live on the premises, that the kitchen shall be cleaned and sanitized between guests. You know, just like going to any rental property, when you rent a condo or whatever, people may leave their leftovers in the fridge from the last occupancy or whatever, and that stuff should all be cleaned and moved out before the next occupants come in. But if somebody's actually living there and using that as a refrigerator, it's a different situation. Now, the one you just described falls somewhere in between, and I don't know quite how to word that.
Well, see, I don't understand how an Airbnb would work.
Well, they're not all Airbnbs. I mean, this covers vacation rental by owner situations
okay, same thing.
Where somebody's living away.
I'm not going to buy a condo in town and just have it to be an Airbnb or a VRBO. It's going to be my personal residence.
Okay.
Because it wouldn't be feasible to do it because I only can rent it 50 nights a week or 50 nights a year. So the only way that this is feasible in our instances is that they come into either your house as a whole and you're gone, or they come into your son's bedroom and rent a bedroom. But in both cases, the kitchen's still your kitchen. So I don't see the in between. I only see it one way, and I could be seeing it wrong, but I only see it one way, that it's always going to be someone's residence, and you're always going to
You know how
walk.
sometimes when you rent a place and like the kitchen will have cupboards that are locked that you're not allowed to get into? That's them separating their stuff. You wouldn't want to have a refrigerator that they're using and then you're using, because then that's just bad.
Well, I know, but most, I say
See, that's exactly what I was going to say. So that's that point. So you go rent somebody's house and you open up the refrigerator and there's a gallon of milk in there. So you're gonna use that gallon of milk, and then you're gonna leave it there, and then somebody else is gonna come in and rent the house. And now this is,
I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to use a gallon of milk. But
so that's what this is trying to protect against. We're trying to protect against.
But what you're saying is then either if I'm going to do this, I have to then have no food at all in my refrigerator, or I have to install a lock on my refrigerator and all of my cabinets. That's what it's saying, because.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is this focused? I don't know if this is right or not.
You have to do it from the.
Okay, all right. Okay. So I have used Airbnb myself. Okay, I'm coming. Okay. So I've used Airbnb myself, and I know what you're saying. I guess my overarching question is, if I've got a gallon of milk in my fridge and you're going to come and stay at my house and I'm going to go to my mother's house for the night, who's going to police if my milk is open and if you're going to slug from the bottle? It seems like it's semantics that you're kind of debating, which doesn't make sense in this context. I agree with you. You're always in someone's house. And another point that I would make is that, we're working really hard on driving people to Riverside. And it seems to me, living here 15 years now, that we do a lot of things that push people away. And I think an Airbnb is a great way to welcome these people into our community and into our village, because that's the point, right? I totally agree with you. But I guess my bigger question is, who's watching?
That's my point.
Okay,
my point is, there's a lot of things in here that, like the F, you should change the sheets. Who's gonna? Is Sonia gonna go to everyone's house at the end of the rental period and make sure that the resident changed the sheets, and then threw the milk out? These are things that I think are policed through the site. So it just seems like,
But I think the expectation is that those things should be done. The sheets should be changed, and so that if you have someone who stays there who reports that, the linens are dirty or whatever, then that's grounds for us to say, okay, you no longer have your license because you're not operating a clean Airbnb.
But they're not going to tell us.
They're not saying it to you.
They're going to say it to Airbnb.
No, but it's their opportunity to do so, is my point. And so that's how you maintain licenses, is that when you have reports of complaints. So if that's not a condition of it, and they report it, then it's like, well, that's not something that we require. So, they can just kind of do what they want. That's my opinion. That's our way.
And I think, Pat, I have to agree with you. If we're going to require them to be licensed, what are they licensed to
right,
do?
what's the point?
What's the requirements? I don't think we need to license them to begin with, but I can't believe that we're figuring out some way that the village can worry about somebody's clean or dirty refrigerator. But I think that if we're going to provide a license, we have to be very clear of what the rules are to maintain that license.
Who touched the microphone? 2 words: enforcement nightmare. And unfortunately, this happens in all too many instances, not just here in Riverside, but we get into debating small points that the village, wherever it is, lacks the power and the manpower and resources to enforce. And by doing that, it sets a dangerous precedence because since you don't enforce here or there through lack of resources, when it comes time to drop the hammer where someone needs to be tuned up, so to speak, on their non-compliance, that we as a municipal authority have established a precedence of non-enforcement. And there's no way we could, which is not something that you're looking to create, but that's what happens. So regulate it, but regulate it at levels that we can actually enforce the rules on a daily and consistent basis so that when we need to enforce them on somebody bad, we have the precedence of compliance from others. Thank you.
Couple other questions. Thank you. Why do we ask for $1 million insurance? 3267A. Just, I mean, why?
That's the same one we use for bed and breakfast.
Why? Why? Where's $1 million come from? Why is that? Why do we do that?
That's to protect people who are renting there. So for instance, there's stories from Airbnbs where, you know, there was a tire swing in the backyard and kids were on it and the limb fell and killed a kid. You want to make sure that when someone's conducting a business activity that they're properly insured.
Page 6B. Allowable occupancy of a vacation rental or any part thereof exceed one person per 200 square feet. If I own a 2-bedroom condo and I'm renting my second bedroom out, and my second bedroom is anything less than 10 by 20, a couple, am I understanding this right, that a couple can't come and sleep in that bedroom?
Yeah, I was looking at that too. The PCC raised that number at the last meeting, and you know, I think it's not clear how it's written, whether it's applying maybe to the entire house, which I think it's intended to. It's intended to make sure we don't have somebody in, you know, a bunch of people staying in a place.
I remember when they were talking
for.
about it. But I think they were talking about the square footage of the total home.
Right. Yes.
But right now, you can't. The way it's read, the way I read it is, I can't rent a couple my second bedroom.
Right. So if we add the words entire premises, does that solve your problem?
Square footage of the entire premises, yes. Let's go back to.
Is there consensus on that?
Yes.
To add the entire premises.
Let's go back to my condominium example.
It says elevators.
I own a 2-bedroom condo in a building of 7 other units. Do I have to own 25% of just my condominium unit, or my condominium unit plus the common areas?
Where are you looking?
There's somewhere in here that says you have to have 25%.
That's at the very beginning.
Very beginning. Proof of applicant has at least 25% ownership interest in the property on which the vacation rental is located. So I'm in a condo and I have a 1,000 square foot condo.
It's meant for the condo unit itself, the unit that you're renting out. I suppose property is a little bit arbitrary when you're
So
talking
it's
condos.
just the unit yourself.
Right, so this is in cases where there might be 3 people or 4 people that own a condo unit together. If you're applying for it, your ownership interest in that property, or in this case condo that you own, has to be 25% or more.
And then in another case, if I happen to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in a rental building, I could not
No.
Airbnb my second bedroom. So it's only for owners.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I think that's everything I have.
Anything else? Please call the roll.
Trustee Barrett.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Setterly.
Aye.
Trustee Longstreet.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
The board's permission, since we have coffee here, I'd like to hop over to number C, which is a resolution authorizing execution of a license agreement for temporary use of public property, operation of a pop-up retail sales location for Chocolate Twist. And you're doing this one? Okay.
This is for the train station, just to do a quick recap as to the history of the leasing and licensing of the train station. In January 2011, the village executed a leasing agreement with Solomitri. The duration of the lease was until December 31st of 2012. In late 2012, Solomitri notified the village that they would not be renewing their lease and vacated the space. The space has remained vacant since that time, until a recent inquiry was received regarding a pop-up store for Riverside. At this time, many of our storefronts are being leased. However, this is an opportunity to bring additional traffic to the train station while hosting a pop-up storefront. The pop-up store would be for Chocolate Twist, a local Riverside business and a staple at the farmers market. The owner, Kate Coffey, who is here this evening, is willing to purchase shelving, displays, and signage for the pop-up store. She is requesting a license for the non-exclusive use of the portion of the east end of the train station for retail use from November 18th through December 22nd. However, the licensing agreement allows additional time for setup and removal of the pop-up retail space. The license agreement is therefore for November 10th through December 31st. Since this is the first pop-up store for Riverside, staff is recommending that the village waive the licensing fee, given that it is a short time frame and will provide us data to assess the future viability of other pop-up storefronts. The purpose of a licensing agreement in lieu of a lease agreement is based on the following. Chocolate Twist will be using a small portion of the train station for the pop-up on a non-exclusive basis. The temporary non-exclusive license will allow the possibility for a second pop-up during the same time frame, and for Parks and Rec to continue their use of the train station for storage purposes. And as I mentioned, the owner of Chocolate Twist Cake Coffee is here this evening if the board has any questions.
Ask for a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Motion by Mr. Lumsden.
Second.
Second by Mr. Setterly. Discussion or questions from Ms. Coffey?
I'm strongly in favor, and Village Manager Francis will know that I've been advocating for some use of that station for a long time, so I'm glad something's happening.
I think it's a great idea. Look forward to it. I love chocolate.
Those samples, though.
One question I do have, what happens when somebody else, like if somebody wants to rent it for a wedding? Do you have a way of moving your stuff in the?
Yes. So we propose, thank you, I'm Kate Coffey from Chocolate Twist. We propose that everything that we would, all of our displays would be on wheels or portable, so that if there's a wedding or a beer hop or something during that time, we can simply just come and pick it up and put it into that kitchen area or some kind of a locked storage in the basement. I know there's a basement facility there too. We have no problem picking things up and just moving them. We're not going to be affixing anything to the walls or drilling into the walls.
And I would assume there's somewhere in the contract that says if something happens and somebody breaks in and steals all our cookies, that we're not responsible?
Yeah, we don't make cookies, but yes. And I'll run this all by my insurance agent, who's here in town also, because I like to keep it local as much as possible. And I'll make sure that, you know, all of that is buckled up and in place before we start moving furniture in.
Thank you.
Will we continue to carry insurance on the area?
Yes, because it's just a small component of the train station as a whole.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Coffey.
Thank you. I brought caramels because we don't make cookies. So I'll share some of those with you afterwards.
You have to wait till after they.
So people get their chocolate fix in the train on the way to the.
They can. Our idea is that we would have our business operation open between 6:30 in the morning and about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. And then depending on what the traffic looks like, perhaps again in the evening rush hours, although I know that's crossing the tracks, but we might be able to work something like that out. And then some hours on a Saturday, probably closed on Sunday because even my staff needs to rest once in a while. And then we would have a strong presence during the holiday stroll and you know, all the peak shopping days during that season. But yes, and our hope is that we could be out there giving samples for hot cocoa and really engaging with the customers.
One other question, what kind of signage will we allow her to have?
We will work with her on signage.
Okay. I just want to make sure they know you're in there.
Yes, I plan on big, glossy, sparkly stuff.
Neon.
That
We
light,
like neon.
lots of neon.
Like sure moves.
And I'm actually going to have video gambling in there too. No, I'm joking.
Hopefully you get paid off with
Yeah,
comments.
right. So can I just say one more thing? I live on Burlington, and my kids go to RB, and my production kitchen is just off Burlington. So I am up and down Burlington probably 20 to 25 times a day. I would like to say that I think the streetscape is beautiful. I think that there's been a lot of needless hand-wringing over how long it's taken and what it actually looks like. And I would like to commend the village for taking this on and for doing a beautiful job. And this is not to try to butter you guys up, but I'm also really impressed with how fast the street improvement is going. And it seems like these guys are working through the night to get it done, because every time I turn around, something new is done. So thank you for the update. It really looks good. Thanks.
We're delighted, I'm certainly delighted that this is going to happen in the train station.
Thank you.
We love our chocolate list. Anything else? Please call the roll.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Sutton.
Aye.
Trustee Lumsden.
Aye.
Motion carries, and sorry you had to sit for so long. But I know it was fascinating, and you learned a great deal. Okay, going back to the agenda now, we'll go back to an ordinance adding a new section 6210, beekeeping, to the village code of the village of Riverside, relative to bees and beekeeping. Ms. Francis.
So just to kind of give a brief overview, we've discussed this at the past two previous board meetings, and based on the previous discussions, the ordinance as it currently is outlined, and it's only for beekeeping, it states that the village will notify adjacent property owners that an application has been filed to keep bees. The setback has been changed to 15 feet from the property line, and the following will no longer be required as it was included previously in the draft documents at the previous two board meetings. No minimum lot size, fencing, signage, gate, or treatment of varroa mites. And that is the changes based on previous discussion by the board at the past two board meetings.
So I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve the ordinance.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Lumsden,
Second.
second by Ms. Collins. Further discussion.
Go ahead.
I think I have a simple one, and maybe I missed it, and another resident did bring this up, so I won't take credit for this, and hopefully it's in there, but is there a requirement that if a beekeeper decides to abandon his hive, that it would have to be removed in an orderly fashion?
There is, I looked at it.
It's in there?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
within a certain period of days.
Okay, my apologies on that then.
If they move or if the hive is abandoned.
Right. Yeah, I know it's in here somewhere.
Yeah, 60 days, it's at subsection O.
Oh, right, removal of structures, right. Mr. Bell?
Couple questions. I forwarded you all the NPR on Veramites and how that is affecting the backyard bees. I still think it's something that if we're going to allow this, we should ask that these be treated. I mean, we don't let firewood cross state lines, but we allow bees to cross state lines, because bees don't, you're buying these bees from Florida, from Ohio, from Iowa. I looked on all these things. You buy them in the mail. They come to you, via UPS. So we have more regulations for the movement of firewood than we do for the movement of bees that obviously can not only affect other beehives within a 5-mile radius, but also the beehives, the natural bees that live in our area. So I'm still pushing for the treatment of bear mites. It's no different than rabies for a dog. Secondly, license and permit process, number 1, section D. I brought this up last time. I think a license fee in the amount of $100 should be a non-refundable fee, that if you want to have a bee license, you should come in, pay $100, then bring in your plot of survey. We have to send out our community development director, Jose, to go out and look at the property. You know, it has to be inspected. The village is going to have to go through some costs. So if all of that happens and we find out that your property is not capable of the bees, or you don't have the proper flyways or whatever like that, we've already expended that time and effort of staff. So I would want that money up front, and that it's not refundable.
So you just want to make the $100 non-refundable?
A non-refundable fee. And then it's an annual fee after that, I would assume.
What makes, is there something in here that makes you think that it is refundable? Or do you just want to?
Well, it just says that a license fee, so that, to me, that reads that if I pay you $100, I have a license to have bees.
So you just want to say a non-refundable license fee?
But then I'm going to come into you and bring you my plot of survey, and I'm going to show you where I'm going to put my bees, and then,
It's more like an application.
you know, exactly, an application fee.
So you say a non-refundable license fee in the amount of?
Correct.
Can I address your rural mic thing for a second?
Sure.
Because I was thinking about how we might handle that and I was thinking under 1A, where because they have to be registered with the Department of Agriculture. Right after that, we could say, and that licensee shall reasonably treat licensed hives for varroa mites. That way, we're not getting into trying to say, you know, how many times a year they have to do it, but we're actually bringing the specific issue up and saying that they need to address this issue. Because you've convinced me that it is an issue that we need to.
So what are you saying? I'm sorry.
Just add it after that.
So we just, in 1A, we just add a final clause after Illinois Department of Agriculture, comma, and that licensees shall reasonably treat licensed hives for varroa mites.
On an annual basis?
I don't see that. I don't know whether I don't know. I don't have the expertise to know whether it needs to be annual or not. And I was thinking, I think if we just say reasonably treat, at least we're highlighting the issue and asking people to address it.
Okay.
Is that satisfactory? Is that satisfactory?
That's satisfactory.
Mr. Campbell, did you have a question about that?
Well, as far as the mites, since they truck commercial hives all over the country for the purpose of pollination, we clearly have the movement of the mites in that way. Colony collapse disorder occurs very quickly, so it would be highly unlikely that a queen that was hatched for shipment would have even been exposed to it. And depending on where you get your bees and what kind they are, whether they're overwintered colonies or whether they're brand new where the queen and the workers are not related, they've still been around for a while and would not actively have the mites on them because of their raising for production. And additionally, I don't see really where the village gets the authority to regulate a single beehive at a private property of something that occurs naturally. Because you're not really beekeeping, you're not a producer under this type of an ordinance. If my dog's pregnant, I have to go and get a breeder's license here in town. So I don't believe that the village even has the legal authority to regulate something that grows naturally. And the reason that I ask this is because I have a friend that has a couple of hives, a couple of villages away, and his hives swarm, and it's a natural bee. It's less than 5 miles from here, And if there's a natural swarm that gets shaken off of a tree branch into a hive, it's not like you're keeping them. It's kind of like a cat. It stays because they want to. So all of this regulation, I don't think the village even has the authority to do that. And to charge people hundreds and hundreds of dollars of annual fees when the best minds in the business can't stop CCD is just adding lots of extra expense and trouble, which is kind of a backdoor way of prohibiting hives. So on those bases, again, I just question the allocation of village resources. We seem to have problems with property maintenance issues. Jose's going to be going around checking if my beehive's in the right place. I just had to bring those points up because it seems like much waste of village resources in addition to the boards, but all these good people, all the staff members that have been involved, and it's just like burning money for something that you can't regulate. Thank you.
Pilot project. We had this discussion last time. I don't know if it's fair for a beekeeper to, if I'm gonna be a responsible beekeeper and I do a nice job, and I'm gonna invest, this isn't an inexpensive hobby, and I'm gonna invest thousands of dollars into being a beekeeper, that this pilot project in a year could get pulled out from me because a guy 6 blocks away from me is not a responsible beekeeper and has a problem. So I mean, we either allow it or we don't allow it, and we enforce it, and we get rid of people that aren't bad, that aren't responsible beekeepers, and we allow responsible beekeepers to do it. I just think the pilot project is not fair to somebody that's a responsible beekeeper. That's my thought on that. And then the last thing is, we've gotten a couple of emails from residents who have stated, they're allergic to bees. They have issues, and unlike the natural occurrence of a few bees in your backyard, this isn't the natural occurrence of a hive in your backyard. This is a active 65,000 bees in your backyard, so it's not natural. So in this case, I would say that this should be something that we have as a special use, not a permitted use in the residential district or in Riverside. That if you want to do this, your neighbors get notified. You have to come in front of the board, or you have to come in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission and go through all the things. And if it's going to be a problem, we should know it. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't be the responsibility of the neighbor to then find out and then come in, I just think it should be a special use, not a permitted use.
Other comments? Ready to vote?
So just for clarity, was there a general consensus word non-refundable is being added?
Refundable is okay. And what about the rural light?
I'm fine with any of that language. I think it's a move forward. Right now, we don't allow it. We've had village folks that would like to do this on their own property. We're providing a method for them to do that with some logical constraints that we can somehow manage. Whether we have the resources to do it or not is still.
Just to respond to one thing you said, I mean, my sense of the other ordinances that I've seen that have the pilot project concept, this is something new, and there are people that have concerns, and it seems to me that that's a good faith gesture toward the people who have concerns, that we're going to look at this, we're going to try it, we're going to make sure it works, and then the board, if in a year the board says, it works, there are no problems, we're going to eliminate the pilot aspect of this, and we're just going to allow it going forward and police it as you suggest, then the board would have that authority.
I don't want to speak for Doug, but I know Doug mentioned that he felt more comfortable with this because we were doing it as a pilot, because then it did give us a little bit more control to monitor it, manage it, tweak it as we need to come next year.
Okay, so
Which could include making it a special use.
Next year, right?
Because when we were talking about Airbnb, and I was thinking if that's a special use, then this is a special use. But I guess to be consistent, I'm okay with the licensing, but that may be one of the outcomes of our pilot program. So with that, I'm okay with it.
I'm good with the might language that you mentioned, Ben, on Joe's behalf, and the non-refundable.
Okay, so please call the roll.
Trustee Valerie.
No.
Trustee Collins.
Yes.
Trustee Sedby.
Aye.
Trustee Lumsden.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Well, it requires 4 votes, it's an ordinance.
Aye. Okay. Next up is a discussion of the capital improvement plan. Why does that one require 4?
Any ordinance requires 4 votes. Four votes for approval.
Not just if it requires money, but
Right, motions and resolutions that require spending of money require 4, but any ordinance.
Got it. Gotcha. Learn something every day.
Okay.
Mr. Salinas.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Tonight we begin discussion of the 10-year capital improvement plan, which spans fiscal years 2017 through 2026. The purpose of the CIP plan is to align the proposed capital projects with the short-term and long-term goals of the village, prioritize current and future capital needs, and maintain the village's infrastructure and property. So included in your agenda packets are the 10-year CIP, which consists of narrative, several tables and charts, which not only project the ending fund balances as of December 31st, 2016, but also organizes the CIP by fund, by fiscal year, and by funding source. Also included is a detailed schedule that lists all proposed capital projects organized by year and responsible department. In its current form, the projected cost of all proposed capital projects approximates $23.4 million. Of this amount, $6.4 million is proposed for inclusion in the 2017 operating budget, which the board will be discussing in the coming months. And toward the end of your packets are various memos prepared by staff that provides additional background information on many of the larger capital projects. We also have included a draft of a vehicle and equipment replacement policy for your review, and once this policy has been finalized, it will assist staff in our continuous evaluation of the village's capital assets and aid in prioritizing the timing of their replacement. So I will now answer any questions, provide any additional information that the board may have.
So first, with regard to the preparatory materials, are there any questions for Mr. Salinas before we get into the detail and the departmental? So our department heads are here as well. So nothing generally. So I think perhaps the best way to do this is let's just look at 2017 this evening, especially given the absence of two of our trustees. So looking at the progression for fiscal year 2017 and the various department requests, let's just go through it page by page. We got 4 pages here. Anything with regard to community development that anyone has questions about?
I thought we were just going to do like a quick overview. I thought we weren't going to really get into this to detail. But if we are...
well, what can you explain? What did you have?
Well, I thought basically that was the extent that Marco was going to bring this forward.
Just do what he just did.
Just do what he just did. And, we were going to say thank you and then go over it. If we want to go over it more detailed, I'm happy to do that. I'm prepared to do that.
I would suggest we at least highlight any questions we have and any outliers, good or bad,
Certainly for the four of you who are here.
Yeah,
And,
I think that that's important to have
because this
that
is just a
foundation.
discussion anyway.
Yes.
I mean, we're not going to do anything until next meeting, so.
I did have a question on the funds. Can we back up to that for a second? On the motor fuel tax fund, why were there no expenditures in 2016?
That, actually, I spoke to the village manager, and she reminded me that we are planning on spending $200,000 of those funds later this year.
Okay, and what's that going towards?
That's going towards, so as part of the STP funding that we received for Quincy and Long Common, because we have to already file many things with IDOT related to that particular project, we're going to use MFT funds to pay for the village's portion, because obviously there is the STP grant funding versus what the village has to pay. So it negates us having to go through that process again additionally.
And that'll
for
be
any
this
type of-
year, even though the project isn't till?
Well, we'll be expending it in 2016 because the resurfacing will be completed by the end of this fiscal year. So then the funds would not be expended or expected to be expended then in 2017.
Okay.
So that'll be a revision once Director Salinas starts going through the budgetary process.
Okay, and then we also had substantial expenditures under the water fund. What was?
So, let's see, so I thought we were going to defer the big project in the water fund. I thought there was almost 2.6 million budgeted originally in 2016 that we're going to roll forward into 2017.
It is the sewer separation project that we're doing in the first division. So we're finishing preliminary, well, we're wrapping up on certain testing and surveying, et cetera. So by the time the project is actually bid and we get a contractor for the project, it wouldn't be until 2017.
Okay, so we haven't actually put out these funds at this point, the 4.3 million?
Looking at
114.
It's showing budgeted and projected actual of 4.3 million.
I'm not sure what Marco, you'd have to say whether or not what the year-to-date actual is.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
For the 4.3 on
Yeah,
page 1.
actually, that probably still includes the 2.6 million that was subsequently deferred.
Okay.
So, yeah, some of these numbers are, it says in the top, budgeted, based on 2016 budgeted, and for some of them I was able to project forward, but the $2.6 million in the sewer separation project is part of that 4.3.
Okay.
So it's not going to be done, it's going to be done next year, so really,
I just didn't
if you
remember
subtract
saying
the 2.6 million.
And there may be some fun, like obviously the engineering, and there are certain things that are expended in this fiscal year.
It just seemed like a lot. Okay.
And do we expect that 2017 is a good date for the completion of that work in the first division?
I think that was for you, Mr.
Yes, we do.
Good.
Should get started, we should start early enough in the year. There should be plenty of time to get it done.
Anything else, Ms. Collins?
No. That's all. Thank you.
So let's go back. I think Mr. Sebi had a good way of doing this. It's just if there's anything in here that anyone sees in particular that with our department heads here that we can ask about. I mean, I have one, but it's on page 4. And that's with regard to the resurfacing of parking lot number 1.
Yeah, I have that too.
Do we have something?
I don't have the additional info, so we'll have to have it at a subsequent.
I have asked the village manager to look into, if you look on page 110, we have the estimated life expectancies of capital assets, and you'll see their parking lots, that's asphalt, it's 20 years. I've asked to look into both the life expectancy and maintenance cost of permeable pavers for the lots to see if that would be a cost-effective alternative with regard to not only parking lot 1, but perhaps some of our other lots. So we'll have that information at our next meeting.
The train station improvements, that's not what we're expending, that grant money would also apply towards that, is that correct, the 992,000?
You should tell us where you are.
Page 3 of 4.
3 of 4.
Public Works.
Yeah, under Public Works.
$1 million
train station
Yeah.
improvements.
So the train station, it's inclusive of grant funds, we have to budget the entire cost of the project,
Okay,
even though we'll only be paying a portion of it.
all right, that was my question on several of these, so.
Yeah, what's presented in the budget is the gross amount. What you can't tell just from looking at this section is what the source of those funds are, correct?
Couple of things. One, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. This vehicle equipment replacement policy, it's wonderful. I really, really appreciate it. And I will assume that we will see this with anything with a motor. So we can better understand what we're doing. Community development, $30,000 facade program.
I mean, this is an issue that, as all of you know, has been brought up repeatedly in the past. Staff is recommending for you to take another look at it this year, especially in conjunction with the beautification work we're doing in our downtown, and hopefully, knock on wood, if we are successful in getting the ITEP grant for Quincy, we would be, it would apply there as well. So yeah, this is something we've never done before, but it is something that was in CMAP. There was a proposal from CMAP. So I don't know, Ms. Francis, if you wanted to add anything.
And Director Apt has drafted documents for a potential program for a grant funding reimbursement style type of program that if the board wanted to keep this in for 2017 would then come to the board for adoption at a later date via resolution, and then would then be administered by staff and would have a process in place for the facade improvements.
So
and I think
it'll be some sort of grant, so it's...
What she has proposed in here is 50%, not to exceed 10,000.
right.
This would be a matching.
Right.
It would be and it would be a reimbursement basis.
And we
So-
can talk about the details of that, but in general, I'm very much in favor of a facade program.
As you look at the streetscape that's being done, and I think it looks beautiful, and then some of the buildings, it's like if they could just be cleaned up a little bit, it would really add to that look. So I'm very much in favor of this also.
Chief Buckley? Now that the dam is gone, I know we live on a river, but we still need another, our boat.
Absolutely, and one of the reasons for it is with the dam being removed, the waterway is now even more active with kayakers, boaters. We haven't had too many issues on it since the dam removal, but that doesn't mean we're not going to in the future. Also with flooding, we've used our rescue boat numerous times to do evacuations. It is a inflatable Zodiac boat, which has the inflatable pontoons, so we're able to get into shallow water with it to get to houses where we need to.
And we feel that it's reached its life.
Yes, I talked to the manufacturer. He was actually out here a couple months ago to look at it. He inspected all of what they call well joints, but they're actually glued joints in the pontoons. He said they're still good right now, but they're reaching their life expectancy, which is usually 15 years for a boat of that design. For a rescue boat, ours was purchased in 1998.
How many times can we use it? Can we use it once a year, twice a year, 5 times a year? Sometimes
Some years more than others.
It was pretty helpful when we had the flood a couple of years ago in April.
Flood we used a lot.
Yeah, you pulled a lot of people out of, what's that, Gladstone Street right down there? Is that what they're not?
In
Yeah.
the lawn area, as
And then
well as
over
on
here
Roland
too,
and,
Forest and right back in there.
On West Avenue, Pine Avenue, we did a lot of rescues over there, even on Lincoln Avenue where it did get up to at that one. We also did a rescue in Forest View of another town's boat that was swept away and they lost power and we had to go get them out, so.
Is that because their board didn't replace it?
It just adds to.
Rowboat would give us some upper arm strength, you know.
I mean, with these kind of boats too, it's not necessarily usage that causes the degradation. And what you don't want a failure at exactly the moment that you need something.
That's what I was saying, if it does
UV light
fail.
is terrible on those boats. It does degrade the rubber and the glue joints. And then just debris in the river, going down the river. There's a lot of logs and other rocks and things that we do encounter.
Is this the type of boat that is recommended for this type of activity?
For our area of the river, yes. The reason why is it sits very shallow in the water. It's got redundant pontoons built into it, so if we do hit a rock and we develop a leak, we're not going to lose the boat. It's not going to sink. We do have other pontoons on the boat that will, or chambers, I should say, within those pontoons to keep it afloat. The other part about that boat, we can deflate it, carry it down to where we need it, and then reinflate it in a very short period of time. So it's very transportable for us, which makes getting to difficult areas very easy for us to do with that boat. We do keep it inflated for rapid deployment, but we do have that capability. It has an air bottle built onto it that we can deflate the boat very quickly and also fill it up quickly.
Thank you.
This is the only boat that we have.
Yes, it is.
Chief Weitzel on the lobby, which obviously will desperately be needed. It looks like just the numbers haven't been updated. We were originally thinking 140,000, and that's kind of been revised down to 100,000.
It
as an
has.
estimate.
It was, it's where our plan is to make it a secure, like an ATM lobby. So we have to secure the outside and then the inner lobby. Currently, we'd have to provide lighting, video surveillance, a writing table. We'd have to update. There's no heat. The heat in that lobby is heated by the inner lobby.
Right.
Those vents that you see on the outside lobby, which would be our vestibule, is currently not functioning. So we'd either have to expend a lot of money to get that up and functioning, or just get some type of portable heating system. We need to get a phone system directly to North Riverside. We need to get our video system to North Riverside. And we probably need to have some type of security inside, because when an officer comes into the lobby, the dispatch center is either going to tell the person with the phone, wait in your car till the officer comes and say it's 10 o'clock at night. And then when the officer comes, if it's something where they can bring him in the station and file the report, then they can bring the individual into the inner lobby. We probably won't have them in the facility itself, because it will be completely unmanned after. If the officers are on the street, there will be nobody in the police facility after 5 or 6 o'clock, unless the officers are eating dinner or something. So even our anticipated records person hour would be over by 4 or 5 o'clock. So those estimates came from talking to other chiefs who secured their lobbies. I talked to chiefs in several communities, and the ones that have the vestibules, that's an estimate. It can be a little lower, it could be a little higher. There are some communities that only put the phones on the outside of the door, but each chief I talked to didn't recommend that. Several chiefs, after they did that, had incidents where people were coming to the police station for help and had to wait outside, and the police cars were tied up, and they since changed it to where they can make it a vestibule lobby, so at least they can get, the dispatch center can buzz them in and nobody else can get in without being buzzed in. So it is a moving target. We may be able to reduce it a little bit. I'm still waiting to see when the center shakes out to get somebody to actually give us a hard number, meaning a contractor or a vendor.
And the distributed antenna system, okay, that's right, so it's split. So has Riverside Brookfield agreed to split the cost, or how far are we in those discussions?
They have not. What they have agreed to is to allow us to see if we can get a grant. So the grant season for us, this project seems like it's taken a long time, and it's because when we started it, the grant season was over. So our next grant season for what they call Judicial Advisory Grant, the JAG funds, happens October 1st. We're going to submit this project for partial or full funding. If we get that funding, then we'll go back to the school and see if they partner with us. If our funding, grant funding, is completely rejected for this project, it'll be pushed back, because I don't think RB had the interest to split the cost of what it went up to. It was over about $140,000, if not more, for police and fire to get our system out of there. Doesn't mean we don't need it. It means I'm just trying to make sure that I come back to the board and say that I've tried everything, including grant money, before I come to you with this large request. So we will submit our grant October 1st, and we should have an answer before the end of the year whether they accept our grant or a part of it.
And this is primarily for if one of our police officers is inside of RB, you cannot properly communicate with them because of the way the building is built. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's actually RB's, our officers are inside their building and can't communicate out. It's an unsafe
That's absolutely
situation.
correct. There's sections of the school that the radio doesn't hit the repeater to be able to come to the police station. So this system is a booster, a radio booster that's put into the school to get through those walls. And what will also benefit the fire department now uses a relay system. We can't do that because we don't have that many officers to be able to do that. But it would also benefit every single community that comes to RB. So the towns that are on our frequency, North Riverside, Lyons, anybody that's using the same network that we are would have the same problem in RB, would also benefit from that repeater system. And we tested it with the school. The deputy chief walked the entire school with the vendor, and the RB High School superintendent assigned his staff. And we also invited each police department that feeds into the school to bring their radios and test them, and over 50% of them failed.
And Brookfield, I mean,
they're on a different they're not on our radio frequency, so they did their probably ball in this game isn't as big right now, but I say that anticipating that they're joining our dispatch center in North Riverside, so they will be joining our frequency come 2017 to 2018. So it will affect Brookfield in the future. And it definitely affects the Brookfield Zoo. They are on our frequency too.
I think it's important that we have partners in this. I don't think it's fair that Riverside bears the whole expense for this by any stretch of the imagination. So
we have reached out to the other police agencies that feed into the RB, but I think they're waiting to see if we get a grant, and then they're waiting to see if the Riverside Brookfield High School partners. That's a major component. It's a benefit for their staff, their students, their vendors, their visitors. So I think they're waiting to see if the District 208 board will partner with us once we see if we're getting the grant.
Well, but the irony of this that angers me is that the problem was caused by their building.
Right, I agree.
Not by anything that our police or our fire departments or any of our neighboring police or fire departments are doing. So it shouldn't be our cost at all.
I agree, 100%.
And yet we have a situation in the world in which we live, unfortunately, where we could have our officers or students or teachers in a hostage situation, a shooting situation, a fire situation, and we don't have communication. So, this has been something as the chiefs know that I have been very interested in for a long time now, and I can't believe that we are not getting a stronger sense of support from the school when it's a construction issue. It is not a function of our equipment. So I'm hoping that cooler heads will.
Well, we will have an answer by the end of this year for our grant, and then we'll move with or without the grant. At least I can tell our president and trustees that we have done everything that we can to minimize our cost, but yet improve public safety.
It would be unconscionable for us to have one of our officers or a resident or student or teacher trapped inside of a building because we're not willing to spend the money to keep them safe. So I hope the school district hears that loud and clear from this board.
I agree.
Likewise, I would expect their support on the grant application as well.
Yeah, they said that they would submit a support letter if we asked for such a letter. Yes, and so would the other our neighboring police jurisdictions.
Can I? Can I go back to the vote for a minute? In the narrative, you had said that you were going to maintain the trailer.
Yes,
So is the 25 with or without the trailer?
without.
That's already
That's for the
without?
boat-in motor, and
Okay.
the motor is a specialized motor. It's a short prop, so it's not an actual, the prop sits very shallow in the water,
Okay.
so we can't go in it.
I just want to know if we can knock some money off of this, but okay.
And what are we gonna do with the old boat motor? Are you gonna trade it in? Or is it-
We're gonna look at a trade-in on it, so that will be addressed with the manufacturer.
Anything else, just with regard to 2017 as well? That's fine.
Well, I'm just assuming, we have a patrol vehicle and a CSO vehicle, and I'm assuming we will, if we adopt the policy, this will be, okay.
How many vehicles do we have for the police department?
We have 9 squad cars, and that includes the detective squad cars and the CSO car, which is one of the ones I'm proposing to purchase for 2017. The CSO car is the oldest vehicle in our fleet.
That's the last of the Brown bags, right?
Yes, that's the last of the Brown bags, yes.
And the patrol vehicle is one of the Tahoes. I don't want to go into the age, but when we get a new Tahoe, we trade it in, correct?
Well, this year, we would probably purchase the Ford Explorers. We keep the one Tahoe for the command vehicle. But going forward, I'd probably do the Ford Explorers. But we do trade in unless the manager, in discussions with myself, thinks that it's more prevalent that we roll it down to another department. So we would trade it in, and we'll get some trade-in value, unless at that time we think that it could be repurposed for another department.
All right, here's my question. Does it make any sense to, instead of trading in one of those vehicles, keep the vehicle as a I don't want to say spare, but a spare. So we maintain that vehicle, we keep it in good running order, and then as these other vehicles come up, it seems like we're proactively buying when we don't maybe necessarily. Well, maybe that will be addressed with this vehicle. I think, that'll be addressed with this. So forget my question. Thank you. All right, I'm just rethinking myself.
We don't have pool cars.
Okay, I got it.
We used to years ago, but that was under. Actually, I can tell you the reason we got rid of that is we used to allow. We used to mandate that officers go to court in our squad cars. Okay, so for liability purposes, we used to have a rule here that officers couldn't take their own police cars to go to court on their days off. Well, we negotiated with the fraternal police and our insurance carrier, and that's not true anymore. So we allow officers on their day off to go to court in their own vehicles and not have to come here to pick up cars to take off the street to go to court anymore. And we've had that policy probably for about the last 8 years. Because at one time we did have more cars, specifically just as pool cars, so officers could use them for training or court without pulling cars from the road. Now we allow them to go to training and court, and they're still covered if they're on official police duty in their own car.
I saw somewhere in here that there was a $80,000 expenditure. I don't know where I saw it, but the study for reuse of the youth center for probably a police fire type of thing. Is that where did I see that?
That's for the police station.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on my memo. Probably one of the last things. I pushed it after talking to the manager to 2019. I put that on there for you to keep in mind that we had actually put that in a budget before, and then we pushed it to 2017. But when we were doing this 2017 budget, after consulting with the manager and the finance director, we thought it'd be more appropriate to move it farther out. Probably 2018 or 2019. So I put that on there because I told you last year that it would be in 17's budget. But I want you to know that I didn't forget about it. I'm just pushing it out to 2019 after consulting with the finance director and the manager. And those numbers came from police facilities that we contacted who built a new facility and said, what did you pay just for the initial groundwork? What did you pay? And I contacted departments that have built their stations in the last 5 years, and that was a rough estimate. Obviously, we'd have to get vendors in here to give us a bid for that, but we thought it was too early to actually do that because their money, their dollars wouldn't be the same now as they would be in 2019.
Here's my point with that. There's a lot of things in here. You know, modifying an overhead sewer to stop backup, fixing, you know, in the police, there's the modifying the sewer, there's remodeling the evidence room of $8,000 and things here and there. I mean, if we're serious about doing something with that complex over there, it's going to have to be done with a referendum. I mean, you said that before. I think we should do it. I mean, I think we should instead of putting Band-Aids on stuff, let's put together a program and let's put it out to the residents, but have something for them to look at, and let's do this.
I mean, I had that exact conversation with the manager today, and the chief and the manager can articulate more detail, but really the things that are on here are things that are pressing now, so that even under the best case scenario, that we were able to do something like that in 2018, 2019. The evidence room situation is a health issue. And Chief, I don't know if you just want to, I guess the short answer is they are Band-Aids, you're correct, but given how long that project would realistically take, they're Band-Aids we need to put on.
The evidence room is something that needs to be addressed. I actually took it out of my memo, I think, because I'm trying to see if we can I'm asking if we could use other dollars for that. For example, I'm asking the federal government if we could use drug seizure money to remodel or upgrade our evidence room. So I'm waiting for an answer from Washington to see if those type of dollars can be used for that. So I don't have an answer from Washington yet. But the evidence room is in sore need. Sometimes you could walk down to our police station and you get high just from the smell of marijuana that we seized the day before. Because that's a huge problem. Even in the vacuum, the way we seal them, the evidence rooms are right next to the detective, the lieutenant, the deputy chief's office, and my office, and the roll call room. And sometimes it's like high times down there. It's so bad, it's a health issue. It really is the officer's complaints, and it's really bad. And it permeates for days. So, and it's not because we're not packaging it right, it's because we're making large seizures of cannabis, and that's just one issue. And I don't have the storage for it. So, as you know, remember last year I looked into renting storage, but that was a whole nother issue, and you have to get many different agencies involved in order to get the state police to certify us to hold our evidence off-site, et cetera, et cetera. It's really cost prohibitive. So, that is something that needs to be addressed.
I don't even know how to answer go to that.
And there is another component to this, because this board, I think, has really been very aggressive about this idea of a kind of a global solution over there with regard to the youth center, the fire and police. But really the Burlington project, the train station project, all of these things that are going on right now at the end of this year have basically sucked all the air out of the room in terms of staff resources. I mean, there's only so much our folks can do at one time. So realistically, to plow into this, to start getting the information we would need in some time. What does the community want us to do? What is the vision for that location over there? Are we talking about rehabilitating the youth center? Are we talking about tearing it down and having some other kind of facility? I mean, this is a big, complex question, and so that's kind of why we all know it has to be done, but we have to do it when we have the resources we're exhausted.
I agree, but the longer we wait.
I would be fine. I'm open to the idea of starting that discussion in 2017.
But the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to be. We've already seen that with cement contracts, and we've already seen that with the Burlington contract. How expensive that got, just because times are getting better, construction companies are getting better. The longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to be. I don't know if we can go to the residents for some sort of non-binding referendum or something to at least get their focus on whether, $6 million is something that would be, I don't know where I came up with that money, but, put something on there so we can at least see their appetite. So we don't have to spin our wheels or whatever. I don't know how to do it, but I'd like to try to tackle that somehow, sooner than later.
Again, just 2017, at our next meeting, kind of to tie on to what Trustee Bowden just said, I mean, we do need, it is an abstract, to a certain degree, an abstract document, but we do need to take a look at this projection and decide as a board whether there are things on here that we simply think are not realistic, that we can just kick off this schedule, things that we're simply not going to do. So that will be a discussion for next time, but that's really the extended.
Okay, last question I have. Tuck Point in the Village Hall, $50,000. What responsibility does the village have compared to the township for the maintenance of this building? Mr. Bailey.
Yes, the Village Hall portion of this complex is fairly well defined, and it's really to the west of the main entrance doors here, and then comes back around to the rear door, and then we have the area to the west or to the east of Township Hall that starts encompassing police and fire areas.
So we split the exterior?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the township had a part of their facade tuck pointed last year, or 2 years ago, I think it was. I don't think they went all, I know they didn't go all the way up to the top because there's terracotta up there near the top of the township portion that is missing mortar, for instance. But it's separated. The village owns, as I understand it, the village owns the Village Hall, although they're joined.
The village owns the Village Hall. Okay, but the township did some tuck pointing.
On the front of their building. So this middle part is really the township's responsibility, from the ground floor up to the top.
But they didn't finish it.
No, we're talking about just doing the Village Hall portion of the.
But I'm just saying the township, when they did their part, they didn't finish it.
Right. Yes.
For some reason.
For whatever reason. Right.
My question is, should then we go to the township and say, okay, we're going to bring a tuck pointer in to do this part. We could do that part for you while he's here. There'd probably be less money for us to try to incorporate both of these.
I think that's a good idea. When I took advantage of the opportunity when I had some expert masonry people in town, and that's how we kind of came up with that $50,000 figure, and that's being faithful to the historic nature of the building and so on and so forth. They're the ones that pointed out, oh, by the way, there's mortar joints up high near the top that are empty, and I did mention that to the township supervisor. And so there is some openings there, maybe, and that would make some sense to do a joint project.
I would think, I have no problem fixing the Village Hall, obviously, but there's issues that we should try to do it together. It probably, economies of scale would make a lot of sense. Okay.
Anything else?
Ron, you have almost nothing on here. Is the fencing on Harrington this year?
Yes, that'll be completed this year, before the end of the year. What we're addressing now is, I've actually spent the last 5 years aggressively addressing previously deferred projects. So structurally, everything is sound. To our advantage, we're more in the aesthetic stage and improvement stage. So that's why there's not a lot of big ticket items coming up in the near future.
Okay, but the fencing, it will be completed?
It'll be done before the end of the year, yes.
Okay.
Is that fencing on the Harlem Street side that we were talking about?
Yes.
Excellent.
Last call for 2017.
One other question, I'm sorry. The Swan Pond, $75,000, is that just the path, or is that going to be addressing, I know that reading the landmark, I get to see it in the landmark before I actually saw it in person, but is it going to be regrading? I mean, I think the grading is an issue. I mean, to try to plant it or do stuff without addressing some of the other issues. Mr. Bailey?
Yes, that budget item encompasses 3 different items in Swan Pond. One is restoration of the damage to the drainage swale that was caused by the ice dam flooding several years ago. That should mostly be replanting, reestablishing vegetation. That's what I'm thinking right now. Secondly is replacing the pathway. It's the narrow asphalt with some other to be determined, finally determined material. It could be gravel chips or something like that. And the third item is on the west side of Swan Pond. There's these concrete posts with the chain that runs through them. Those are leaning, some of those are leaning quite precipitously. I think it's because that hillside has eroded over time. So that would be kind of excavating that hillside enough to reset those concrete posts.
What about grading to get the water to go? Because it kind of sits there in pools in that one area. I mean, are we addressing it? Because when that ice came through, it moved all of that.
Well, here's my perspective of Swan Pond. When the ice dams occurred, it was right after the Corps of Engineers had vegetated that drainage swale, and it lifted that vegetated mat up and set it aside. That still basically sits there. But the drainage swale then didn't have all of the plants in it that it was supposed to have in it. There's the culvert with the duckbill valve on it. The way that's supposed to work is during a flood event, or it could be a sustained rain event, there's a lot of water that will be funneled into that drainage swale, and I think it works. And it sits there, especially if it's a flood event or high rain event where the river water comes up. That water will sit there until the river level goes down, and then there's enough head pressure from that water sitting in Swan Pond to open up that duckbill valve, and then it flows out. It's done it repeatedly over the last year or so. So I think the functionality of that of Swan Pond, in my opinion, it works as it was designed to do.
You don't think there's a need for grading?
No.
Okay.
Maybe some fine grading, but basically I think it does what it's supposed to do. It does it simply and without much expense.
Okay. That was
no
my
moving
question.
parts.
One question, though, that the board should think about is that path. I mean, it is, it's narrow, it's asphalt, but it is functional at this point. Is this something that you want to invest in replacing now? Or is it something that you want to let it run its course, run its life, and then at that point you would think about?
I'm surprised that the 3 things that you mentioned can be done for $75,000.
Well,
to be honest, because I would think that the path itself.
I think the path itself would be more than that.
Well, it depends on the material you chose. There was three different materials identified by the village engineer. The least expensive, and I think it might have been somewhat favored by the village board at the time, was these granite chips. But there's certainly concrete.
Yeah, well, we've had great luck with the granite chips in the parks that we put it. We put it in Patriots and we put it in Turtle Park. We've had great luck with it. I am agreeing though with you that I would not rip up a path, a usable path to just do something cosmetic like that personally.
Absent grant funding or some donation to do that, I agree. Yeah.
Scott, your opinion about that?
I'm still thinking
I'm not a big fan of the grading.
We'll revisit this one.
Chips with water, it's just gonna get washed out all the time.
Okay, it's getting blank. Anything else in 2017? Okay. So we will pick this up at our next. Does anyone have any new business? The only thing I had is something that our village clerk gave to me. You gave me this? So if you haven't seen this, this is the Forest Preserve of Cook County map, bike map, the brand new one. And it has all of our Riverside bike trails for the first time actually included in this map. So you can get these actually right outside the village office here if anybody out there would like to get one of these. It's the central zone map from the Forest Preserve District of Cook County.
Is the dog park finished over in the Miller Meadows? And do they have the landing for the boat? They were going to put a boat launch on there too. Did they?
I've not seen it go much. The dog park is definitely open. It's been open for about a year, I think, right?
We do have need for an executive session this evening.
Of course. I would like to, maybe I should have brought this up in the village manager's report, but could we get an update on the business development district on Harlem and the acquisition of property over there? Is there any update you can provide us on that?
Yes, so at an upcoming meeting, phase 1 has been completed, so that'll be provided to the board, I would assume probably at an upcoming meeting to accept and decide on phase 2 testing.
And what is our time frame for that?
With regard to the acquisition of the property, I can't recall off the top of my head. I know it's an October closing date, I believe.
And the business development district is moving forward and?
Yes, well, right now, if you recall, we have the RFQ that is out for developers. So we're waiting on the status of that before we move forward with the business district, so that if we have a developer selected, that we can somewhat work in concert with that individual.
So the RFQ's out?
The RFQ's been out, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we do have an executive session this evening to discuss pending litigation. So I'd ask for a motion and a second to adjourn, not to reconvene. The final action will be taken during executive session. Motion by Mr. Lumsden.
Second.
Second by Ms. Collins. Please call the roll.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Stephanie.
Aye.
Trustee Lumsden.
Aye. Motion is adjourned. Meeting is adjourned. Good night. It's late.